So, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are almost here, giving us a new generation of Pokemon. And as has become tradition at this point, each new generation also gives us a brand new mechanic to shake up the game in some way. Generation 6 gave us Mega Evolution, Gen 7 introduced Z moves, and Gen 8 had Dynamax. Now, for Gen 9, they are giving us brand new mechanic, Terastallization, and I think it is going to break the game, and here's why. So, in case you are not already aware, Terastallization allows you to change your Pokemon's type into whatever type you want. Any of the 18 types in the game, your Pokemon can change into it. Which by itself is a cool and unique concept. However, I do think that the way they have decided to implement this is very unbalanced and on the whole will negatively impact the game, at least from a competitive standpoint. So, first off, I guess I should explain how the mechanic works in a little more detail. So, basically, all Pokemon have a pre-designated Terra type that determines what type they become when they Terastallize. So, let's say you had an Eevee, which is, of course, normally a normal type. If its Terra type is Grass, then that allows it to change into a Grass type when it Terastallizes. Now, as I said, every Pokemon has a set Terra type, which means you're not able to freely choose what type you can turn into. Once you have started a battle, you have to decide what your Pokemon's Terra type is before you enter a battle. But as I said, also, any Pokemon is able to turn into any type. A lot of people have compared Terastallizing to Hidden Power, which, while I get the comparison, I don't think they're totally comparable to each other. Because while there is, similarities in the fact that, like, your Pokemon has one specific Terra type, while before your Pokemon had a specific Hidden Power type, and so on. And like Terra Blast, letting you essentially choose what coverage to have on your Pokemon, similar to how people would use Hidden Power and stuff like that. But I think Terastallizing is so much more crazy than that, because it's not just like being able to have whatever type of move you want, it also literally changes the type of your Pokemon. And I think the implications of that are far more drastic than Hidden Power ever was. Now, as it says here on the website, your opponent is not able to see what Terra type you have before you Terastallize, meaning they have no possible way to tell what of the 18 types you could potentially turn into, which I think that right there is the first and maybe the biggest issue I have with Terastallizing, and why I think it's very unbalanced, because if you have no way to know what type Pokemon can turn into, and your opponent has 6 Pokemon that all could potentially Terastallize, because if you weren't already aware, Terastallizing, while you can only one Pokemon on your team can Terastallize in a battle, but you can choose which Pokemon to Terastallize at any given time. So pretty much like Dynamax in that aspect, you choose one Pokemon during the battle to Terastallize. And I just think the fact that you have no idea which Pokemon your opponent will Terastallize, you have no idea what type they could be, I think it ultimately makes pretty much every battle way too much of a guessing game, and just gives way too many potential scenarios to keep track of and really effectively play around. You know, you can see in this example they give right here that you have this Tyranitar out and the Gallade goes for close combat since it'd normally be super effective, but then it Terastallizes into a ghost type and then takes no damage from close combat. And it's like, well, how are you supposed to account for that when, like, I mean, you could predict that they're going to Terastallize in that specific instance, but how can you be sure? Because you can't be sure what Terra type they're going to have, and you can't be sure if they're going to Terastallize that specific Pokemon. So I think it basically makes every turn of a game a 50-50, where you just have to try to guess what they're going to do, if they're going to Terastallize or not. And I think that's just very unhealthy and frankly kind of uncompetitive for the game, if I'm being honest. But mind games aren't the only issue I have when it comes to Terastallizing, because I also think it just makes your Pokemon way too strong for no reason, pretty much. So of course, when you're changing your type, you'd also expect it to change your stab accordingly, which is the case. And while we saw a second ago an example of using Terastallizing defensively with the T-Tar versus the Gallade, I think Terastallizing is going to be much stronger when used offensively, basically allowing any Pokemon to get stab from any offensive type that they want. And even if they don't have a stab move for that specific type, this new move they're introducing called Terra Blast will let them have stab for whatever type they Terastallize into, because Terra Blast's type always matches the type you Terastallize into. And Terra Blast can either be physical or special depending on which stat is higher for the Pokemon using it. So pretty much any Pokemon can have any coverage it wants, which, while could be cool for some lower tier Pokemon that lack coverage and get walled by a lot of stuff, I think that is a bit of an issue for stronger Pokemon in the higher tiers, because it could potentially mean that basically they can just beat all their counters and nothing can wall them. But to me, the really crazy part isn't the fact that a Pokemon can have whatever stab it wants. The crazy part to me is that if you Terastallize into a type that your Pokemon already is normally, then your Pokemon will get a boost to their already existing stab. So here they show Lilligant Terastallizing into a grass type, which Lilligant's obviously already a grass type, and then once it Terastallizes, its grass stab becomes even stronger. Now, they haven't said yet how much of a boost you get by doing this, but I'm just assuming that it's probably going to be comparable to an adaptability boost. And letting any Pokemon you want have adaptability is absolutely ridiculous. And I think this is kind of similar in a way to Z moves and Dynamax. I think in that way, this mechanic essentially just lets the rich get richer, as it were, letting Pokemon that are already very good offensively, have very good offensive typing, just get even more powerful by basically being able to have an adaptability boost whenever they want, which is kind of insane. And on top of that, the craziest part is that I think, to me, is the fact that, you know, you'd assume once you change your type that you're only one type, you're only pure water or pure grass or whatever, so you'd only have stab on that type. But no, apparently you just get to keep your stab from your normal typing beforehand, even after you Terastallize. So basically, if you change into a type that your Pokemon wasn't before, then that means essentially you just have 3 stabs, which is freaking ridiculous. Like, I don't understand why they would do that. Like, it just seems completely, like, there's no limitation, there's no restriction, there's no balance on it. It just is so insane to me. The fact that they would let you have 3 stabs on a Pokemon, which has never even remotely been a thing before. And, the game is balanced around a Pokemon having at most 2 stab attacks, but being able to have 3, I feel like that just means that if the Pokemon has the right coverage, that there's just nothing that can switch into it, because it's just going to be hitting way too hard without probably enough Pokemon that's able to resist all 3 of those types. Now, a way you might expect them to try to balance this mechanic somewhat is by forcing your Pokemon to hold an item. That's what they did with Megas and Z moves. Basically, you can't use the mechanic without that item, and beyond allowing you to use that mechanic, that item is pretty much useless. So it's sort of a trade-off like that. And I do think that would make the mechanic a little less unbalanced by forcing you to choose ahead of time before each battle what Pokemon you're going to Terastallize, because, unless you just put the item on all your Pokemon, which you probably aren't going to do, you have to pick a Pokemon to give the item, and then only that Pokemon can Terastallize once the battle starts. However, again, similar to Dynamax, a Pokemon is not required to hold an item in order to Terastallize, as they have shown off in trailers before. And just as if letting Pokemon get adaptability whenever they want, or letting Pokemon have whatever stab on coverage they want. On top of that, a Pokemon is able to hold any item they want, so which means boosting items like Life Orb, like Choice Band, like Choice Specs, essentially just letting them be even stronger than they would already. And to me, that's really the crazy thing, that this mechanic just seems like there's no drawback. Like, it just, like a free make your Pokemon stronger button, basically. And the thing is, it's not even like Dynamax, where that was for a limited time. Terastallizing lasts the whole battle, even if you switch out. So whatever Pokemon you Terastallize, they get boosted for the whole rest of the game. And while you could say you are limited in the fact that you can only Terastallize one Pokemon in a battle, I really don't think that makes much of a difference, because just the fact that you can give crazy power boost to any Pokemon on your team, even if it's just one, I think is kind of insane and a little bit too much, if I'm being honest. And I really do think the Pokemon you Terastallize is pretty much always going to be an offensive Pokemon, because while you could use Terastallizing defensively to change your type to resist something else, I just feel like you get way more mileage by using it offensively, especially the fact that you can either have a boosted stab on your already normal typing, or you could get stab on any type you want, which is again very absurd in my opinion. So with all that being said, I do believe that Terastallizing is going to get banned after a short time, at least by Smogon in 6v6 competitive singles. Of course, I don't think that Game Freak themselves is going to ban this mechanic in VGC, because they never do that with their own mechanics. That'd be just kind of redundant for them to introduce something just for you to say you're not allowed to use it. So I have no clue how this will affect VGC and all that. I feel like double battles already there's so many variables you have to keep track of, so many possible scenarios, and I feel like Terastallizing just exacerbates that, and just makes it all the more complicated. But if you are a VGC player, then I'm really praying for you, and hopefully this doesn't end up breaking the game completely. But I guess we will see what happens. But as I said, I am fairly confident that this will get banned on Showdown and all that in OU, just like Dynamax did in Sword and Shield. But I suppose we'll just have to wait and see. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you agree with me that Terastallization is going to be too much, or do you think there's still some way that they can balance it that I haven't thought of? Because personally, I really doubt they can balance this, but who knows, maybe I'm wrong. And also, be sure to leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it, and subscribe for more Pokemon related videos in the near future. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Catch you guys later. Peace.